Want to hear about a movie monster that doesn't suck?
Ladies, gentlemen, geeks of all ages, you are now entering BJ Shea's Geek Nation. Welcome.
Hey guys, Chris Walker here, Walker Like a Flame with BJ Shea's Geek Nation. Uncle Chris on BJ and Migs, back again with another episode of On the Couch with Chris. Still no couch, don't let that fool you. We were talking on BJ and Migs about this list of the scariest movie villains. Dracula was way down at number 11. Leatherface is scary. Annie Wilkes is scary, okay? Carrie's mom is scary. But it's Dracula, man. He may not be the scariest, but he definitely is one of the best, if not the best ever. I mean, it's Dracula. What are you going to do? So this got me thinking about a lot of the different Draculas that there have been, and there have been a lot of Draculas. You can just go to the Wikipedia page and look down the list of all of the films, and there's a ton. You'd be watching movies for weeks. Not to mention books and comics and games and every other thing that Dracula has ever been in. Very, very popular character, obviously, and there's a reason for that. He's cool. Why do we like Dracula so much? It's the same reason we like vampires so much. Tortured, gothic soul, very suave. He can change into a bat, he can change into a wolf, he's got mystical hypnotism powers, all of this stuff. Dracula is just one of my absolute favorite things ever, so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that today, especially some of the movies, big screen and TV movies that Dracula has been featured in. So let's just talk about it a little bit, shall we? Number one, the first interpretation of Dracula ever, Max Schreck as Nosferatu back in 1922. Bram Stoker's estate at the time wasn't allowing people to use the word Dracula or the character of Dracula. The filmmakers got around that by changing his name to Nosferatu, changing all the names in the thing into something that worked, something very German. Kind of how they got around that, but still, it was the first on-screen interpretation of Dracula, and for my money, one of the best and scariest. The image of Max Schreck as Orlok wandering around in a silent film, just one of the most amazing and scariest images from my childhood. Yeah, scarred me for life. That particular Dracula still scares me to this day. When Christopher Lee was getting the job done with Hammer films back in the 60s and 70s, I wasn't actually born when those movies were out, but what I was able to do was watch them later on when they were taking these movies and putting them on TV around Halloween time. I got to see a lot of Christopher Lee as Count Dracula, and this is before I had seen Bela Lugosi. When I think back to my earliest memories of Dracula, it's always Christopher Lee, but also Frank Langella, who was in the Dracula movie from 1979. Apart from the just iconic nature of Bela Lugosi's Dracula, those two are the ones that jump straight to mind when I think of what Dracula is and what Dracula does. There was a very, very strange interpretation of Dracula I saw. It was Andy Warhol's Blood for Dracula, and it had Udo Kier in that lead role. And if you don't know Udo Kier, look him up. A very, very, I don't want to say a weird actor, but he is a weird actor, okay? And the way that he portrayed Dracula in that as well as an addict, above all other things. He was addicted to the blood, which we understand that Dracula needs the blood for his sustenance, and that's what keeps him alive and keeps him living forever. A lot of the other Dracula interpretations, it's a lot more about his obsession, external things, with Mina Harker or with power or with whatever. Udo Kier's Dracula, for me, seemed like he was specifically an addict. He was addicted to the blood, and that's Andy Warhol for you. It was a really, really fun, I don't want to say tongue-in-cheek, more like fang-in-cheek interpretation of Dracula, but it was still really, really good and definitely worth a watch. Before we get to the two really big heavy hitters on the big screen, I want to talk about the little screen a little bit. Back in 1974, Jack Palance did a made-for-TV movie of Dracula, and he was Jack Palance. And he was a character actor of the highest order, but what he gave to the role was a lot of gravitas and a lot of very, very powerful sort of emotive. The way his Dracula came across, you wanted to believe him, and everything he said was just super powerful, and you're like, oh, okay, yes sir, Mr. Dracula, right away. But also there was a Dracula episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it was the very, very first episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer I ever saw. I tuned in, and it was the season premiere. I don't remember what season, and I gotta tell you, the Dracula episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, arguably the worst episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer I ever saw. And to this day, having seen them all multiple times, I will still skip it sometimes when I'm spooling through. Their Dracula was not great. Now, I don't want to fault the actor for whatever reason. I don't want to fault anybody in particular. Just that episode, not a great episode. It was Dracula. I was like, okay, sweet, we're going to get into this. Buffy's going to fight Dracula. This has got to be a thing, right? Well, it was all right. Not great. So, Bela Lugosi and Gary Oldman. I put those two together on the top tier only because Bela Lugosi is the best. There's nobody else anywhere who does a better Dracula, and there's no other more iconic image of Dracula, or of any movie monster for that matter, than Bela Lugosi's Dracula. That's simple. I don't even need to explain to you people why that is the thing, and that's the gold standard for Dracula. There's no one who can argue with me about that. And if you want to argue with me about that, go ahead, leave it in the comments. I will tell you why you're wrong. This is one time I am putting my foot down, and I'm not interested in other people's opinions because there is no better Dracula than Bela Lugosi. I'm just saying. But I also put Gary Oldman up there with Bela as well, only because Gary Oldman is one of the finest actors that has ever been invented. He's incredible. Everything Gary Oldman does, he does it wholeheartedly. He throws himself into every role. He gives it his all. He takes what might not be such a great script or a great character or a great anything, and he turns it into the most amazing piece of artwork I've ever seen. And his Dracula really gave me that as well. Gary Oldman's Dracula was everything that Dracula needed to be. He was suave. He was powerful. He was vulnerable when he needed to be. He was obsessive. I mean, it was Gary Oldman doing Dracula. It's one of those Dracula movies that I will watch over and over and over again. Despite all of the other shortcomings that that movie had, there were a lot. Watching him do Dracula was just, that's almost like religion for me. I love Gary Oldman's Dracula. Second only to Bela Lugosi, in my opinion, for your Dracula. So what do you think? Who's your favorite Dracula? Leave it in the comments down below. Let me know if you have a difference of opinion from any of these things that I've said. Probably do. And get back to me, all right? I want to have this conversation. Let's make it happen. Until then, though, of course, share, like, subscribe. The 3 things I'm always going to ask you to do. And, of course, as always, stay nerdy. No, I didn't bother to think of an intro, so guess what? I'm going to pause this and start again. That were Dracula films, and yeah, there's a ton. Especially some of the movies and TV shows. Especially some of the movies and TV programs, not TV programs either. Max Schreck in Nosferatu back in... Before we get to the 2 big heavy hitters in the movie, there was